Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be back on this episode. And by the time you're hearing this, you should be at least prepping your turkey or eating your turkey or taking a nap from your turkey. I'm glad to be bringing this special episode on Thanksgiving. And it's funny. I was gonna do a different topic for the release on a holiday because it was like, oh, it's a holiday. I don't know. We'll do, then periodically I will be bringing you some discussions that I've done on Clubhouse. So that's what I thought that I was gonna kind of present. But then I went to Cartagena, Colombia, and I was like, no, they must hear about my trip. No, really, this episode isn't about me telling you all the details of my trip, but as the title of the episode says, solo travel after 40 and why it's a must do. Listen, those of you who have traveled with yourselves, and you're going to hear me say with myself a lot, um, by yourself, with yourself, solo, those of you who have done that, kudos to you. You already know the deal. You know the deal, yo. If you did not enjoy your solo travel, I would be really curious to hear why. So definitely email us. Our email is in the show notes, info@findingyourvoiceafter40.com. If, though, this resonates with you, share your comments as well. Email me and let me know. This was such an amazing trip. And, this was my first time doing international travel solo. I have done a lot of travel, obviously domestically solo. Not so much like this though, where it was literally 9 days of just vacating with Kenya. And I wanted to share why I thought this becomes a must do after 40, really a must do in life, but particularly after 40, because there's so many interesting things that are happening in our lives at this point, so many interesting shifts. And I do think being really intentional with our time and being intentional about being with ourselves and not by ourselves and changing that language and understanding what that means, I think it's just super, super important. And I didn't understand the magnitude of that until I took this trip. So I've had a lot of people ask me, just friends, family, say, why did you do this? Or was that an accident? Did you plan that all along? Or how did you book all your stuff? Or just a lot of things. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it a little bit. And so when I do these solo episodes, I attempt not to go terribly long on them. Be as long as when we have a guest, but I'm hoping to share with you why I decided to do this, um, the pros and cons, and believe you me, that pro list is way longer than the con list. And why this is such a must do, why I really encourage you to look at 2023, look at 2024, 2025, just look at it and see how you may be able to plan some level of solo travel. I do think if you plan it internationally, there are a lot of with that. But I also understand the international, first time doing it, Kenya, she go big, first time solo, let's go international, 10 days, but, look at your calendars and begin to think, where can I sneak away for? And I would say, give yourself not just like a 3 day, but give yourself some time. If you could do at least 5, maybe. But if it's a long weekend, that's fine too. But just really being intentional about it. So, why did I do this? Well, the big thing was I turned 50. And I've always told myself turning 50, I wanted it to be something different, obviously, than maybe what I would otherwise do. Um, and in my brain, I'm not a real big party girl, not a really big get your groove on twerk. I'm not that chick. In fact, for my birthday, I have always preferred to spend my birthdays either more just to myself or with my family, my immediate family. But never to have kind of big events around birthday. I did have a really big 40th party that was thrown to me by my family. It was somewhat of a surprise. I knew I was having it, but I didn't know what all was going to be involved in it. And that was the last time I did something big and really good. But I didn't want to plan that again. I didn't want to do something like that again. I did do something very special with a group of girlfriends that I don't get very often. These are girlfriends that I've met throughout my from childhood to adulthood who all live in different cities and states. And we all, and I just picked a select amount. Um, and I was intentional about picking women again that I don't get to see. Women that live states and states away from me that I just don't get to be able to connect with. And so oh, I'm looking at my thing here. And I'm recording, I'm doing multitasking. So those of you who are just listening, if you heard just like a pause, ah, my computer has been doing interesting things. Those of you though understand, and I think that we made note of this in the intro. I'm on YouTube, so you can see me too. So hi to those of you guys watching. But so I had picked a select few, and that was an amazing. That's another podcast episode to talk about what we did together in Los Angeles. But I wanted for my actual birthday, I had decided I wanted to actually go somewhere out of the United States. And without taking up too much time, I mean, my list, I first was saying Portugal. Then some things kind of shifted around because at that point, I was also thinking doing travel with someone. So I was going to do it with my partner and we said, yep, Portugal. Then I was like, some things kind of, I still want to do Portugal, and Portugal is still now really high on my list. But then it kind of was brought to my attention that I remember when I was like in my 20s, I always said, oh, when you turn 50, you should go to your namesake, Kenya. So I said, all right, let me start looking at Kenya. Well, listen, I wasn't going to go that far. I was because it was questionable whether or not I would, with my partner, he would be able to make that swing that just because of some work logistics and some other things. And then when I was doing the whole cost of it all, it was like, oh my gosh, like, because, I want to do the safari. I got to get on the Indian Ocean. Like, I got to be there at least 12 days, and it was just becoming way too expensive for my budget. So I had to take that off the list. So then I reflected some more, and Cartagena has always been kind of in my top five-ish list, five-ish, six, somewhere, five-ish list. And at the time, I was thinking, yes, I was going to do it with either my partner or with one of my girlfriends, a close girlfriend of mine. And so, just the timing of things, a myriad of things was really just not really looking like it was going to jail right for either one of them to really do it. And then it just started triggering in me. And I'm going to be really transparent about this because I was like, I can't be by myself on my birthday. I can't be by myself on my birthday. And I have a coach. She is a spiritual coach for me. And we were talking about this, and it was becoming clearer and clearer to me spiritually that, in fact, the universe, God, my ancestors are like, girl, you need to go on this trip by yourself with yourself. You need to go. And that feeling started coming inside. It started resonating with me. And I started realizing, you know what? I need to do this trip alone. And I have some fears about this. I have a bit of anxiety about this, but in my soul, my intuition never fails me. It has never, and it never will. It is saying, you need to go by yourself. You need to do this solo. And so I listened and I told, my partner, I'm going to do this trip alone. And my girlfriend, there were some things, she got a new job. So we already knew that was kind of off the table. But I was like, the universe is really setting this up for me to do this on my own. And so I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to get some really big lessons from this in a lot of ways. It's going to offer me a lot of a different perspective on a lot of things. I desperately was feeling overworked prior to this, desperately feeling kind of scattered with some business and just a lot was going on like everybody else, right? And it just became clear that going on this trip was going to help that was help that. I didn't know how, but I just knew it would. And I also decided to go to Miami before going to Colombia because I did a really, really special gift. I gifted myself with something that I'm not going to talk about quite publicly yet. I eventually will, I promise you, but I did gift myself by doing something there in Miami that I hope to do another episode to talk about that. And then from Miami, I went to Cartagena and I spent basically 9 glorious days. Actually, I think it was 8. I think because Miami was the first tell. So it was 8 glorious days in a country that I didn't actually get to see all that I want to see. I definitely have to go back because I was really in my be with Kenya and get still and rest. And I really sat in my beautiful hotel and resort. Amazing. Kudos to Intercontinental Cartagena. Beautiful suite that I had. And so I didn't really get out. And that's going to be a little bit part of my cons that I'll get to in a moment. But what I did see was so much culture, so many people that look like me, but were very, very different from me. And so many Americans, particularly Black Americans, coming to Colombia, coming to Cartagena to escape, to experience something different, to have a sense of freedom, to vacate. And so it was a really marvelous, beautiful, restful time. And so I spent most of my time relaxing and resting and getting in the pool and going by the beach. I did do an official tour of an area called Palenque, which, if you go to my IG, you'll see a reel and highlight of this village, this oldest African village in the Americas that was started by freed slaves. Just really, really, that in itself really was such a major highlight to see the people in that village, to see how they are keeping the spiritual beliefs, the African traditions, but also seeing the poverty in that and seeing how just colonialized we are, and that if we are to keep our traditions, how difficult it is to keep monetary and wealth in this, in the Americas, because of the high level of, you know, colonization. And I saw Black Panther because Black Panther was released actually on my birthday. And it really further enhanced, Wakanda is so magical because it's keeping its African truths and traditions and history while thriving. And that's not necessarily the case, in other places outside of the continent. So it was amazing. It was just amazing. I ate good food. I didn't eat even a whole lot, honestly. I was just so comfortable and relaxed. I don't, I didn't want to get sick or feel whatever. So I attempted to try to keep my foods. And I did get a little bit of a tummy something by eating. I know I had this fresh fish that I think might have done a little something to me, which could be a con. But I by no means was I sick. So it was just lovely. And so yeah, so let me move on and talk about the pros. So were a ton of pros. Like, honestly, I think I may have had only two cons. The majority was all pros, really. The biggest pros, I'll highlight maybe I think I wrote maybe 4 of the biggest pros that I would like for you to consider as you're considering doing solo travel. No conflict. Meaning, y'all know when you're going on a trip with a spouse, boyfriend, mother, father, sister, cousin, friend, bestie, there's, especially for 9 days, there's going to be a moment of like, right? Just doesn't mean it has to be a fight, right? But we trying to decide what we're gonna do, what we're gonna eat, why'd you do this? Did you do that? I'm tired. I need a minute. All that, right? Well, when you're traveling solo, none of that is even possible. So you are free. And I'm not that to say you may have conflict with, I guess, a stranger or with your accommodations or something, but I'm talking about that, usually when you travel with somebody, there's not even a chance of that, right? Because it's just you. And that alone, not having to worry about negotiating other people. Are you kidding me? That was the ticket. That was it. That right there for me was enough. So just having that freedom to know that every single day I was not going to have an argument. I wasn't going to even, I didn't have to work. I didn't even have to, no eggshell, none of that. If I stayed in my bed until 3 in the afternoon, got up for 10 minutes and went back, I wasn't going to have to explain that, justify it, nothing. And that right there is probably the biggest pro that I took. Leading to the second pro. You get to do whatever you want, whatever I want. And this really stood out for me how much I see how much I do things to accommodate. Some of it I have to because I have a son who lives with me. One son's in college, so he's not in the house with me. But the other son, just you have to, right? You got to accommodate. Or, when you're just in a relationship, you got to make accommodations, right? But on this trip, it was whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, however I wanted to do. It was just amazing to feel that level of liberation and freedom, especially as a person who has children, who's been raising kids for the past 20 years, who's been, in a relationship, who has family. It was just a lot. It was just, and also as someone who is a helper, my career is I help people all day, every day. I'm negotiating conflict all day. I love the work I do, but to be able to do whatever I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, massive pro. The other third one for me was the stillness. And when I say the stillness, meaning I might be up doing things, but there was just a sense of peace, a sense of no chaos, because I picked the hotel I wanted. I picked the area that I wanted to stay in. When I did an activity, I chose it. So, maybe the activity maybe didn't completely equal what I thought it was going to equal, but there was a piece about it because I chose it, I experienced it, and I was able to say yay or nay and not felt guilty or need to justify. And I realize how much I do that. And I'm not saying that you do that, but I realize how much Kenya does that. This need to over explain why, how, all that mess. Spending those days together, just being me, just created a stillness within me, which I equate to as a peace. And then the last pro that I'll talk about, and I promise you there were way more than this, way more than this of doing this trip with myself, was the rest. I talk about rest. I have a whole song called Rest. I mean, I'm all about the power of rest. And I realized how much I was not resting. And I already knew that, of course. But then having the opportunity to actually really, really rest really highlighted for me just how critical rest is for me right now in my life and how critical I have to be intentional about if it's scheduling, whatever it is that I have to do, I have to create rest because the way my soul, the way my mind, the way my body felt as a result of really surrendering to an extreme amount of rest without necessarily sleeping. That feeling was so magical in so many ways and so much clarity in my mind, so much clarity in my being able to connect to my spirit. And so, what rest and stillness really do for you, they allow you to really tap into you and the inner voice that you have. And I believe those of you who practice those, areas of rest and stillness know this. I too do, but there was something different about this trip. And I think it was just because I had so much more time to sit in that it really, but also have a lot of fun, in that time and being really beautiful weather that I love and, being in a culture that was so diverse. I just felt connected to myself in a really special way. And so it allowed me to rest and have that stillness even more. So those are kind of my top pros. There are many more. The cons. So really, like I said, this con list is pretty short. I would say the biggest cons is when you are traveling alone, especially as a woman, you do have to be very conscientious of your surroundings when you are out and about, right? And I did have a moment where I went into the walled city to have lunch at this amazing restaurant called Carmen Cartagena, and my girl Yolanda hit me up on it. So thank you, Yolanda, if you're listening. It was an amazing restaurant. I need to text you and let you know. Um, so I was in the walled city. It was in a really kind of touristy area or where a lot of people go, and a lot of the natives are there too. And so I said, okay, after I eat, I'll go walk around. And it's daylight. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I felt it was not what I anticipated. It was very crowded, and it was a lot of it became very obvious, my Black Americanness felt very loud to me, and I felt like I was standing out, and so I felt like I was drawing in, attention that I just really didn't want. Whether that be from peddlers, whether that just be from little catcalls, all those things. But it was overwhelming, and I knew that if I was not alone, if I had been with either a girlfriend or I had been with my partner or a family member, that not that that would not that that would be erased, but it definitely I wouldn't have felt it so strong, and I would have had them, right, to help me and to, protection if necessary. So that was a con, not feeling really comfortable to really go alone in certain spaces because I could feel my presence being very different and drawing in attention, more attention than I really wanted to be drawing in. So that was a con. And so then that for the second con was that I didn't really, I that didn't allow me to tour the city as much as I really wanted to and grab the culture as much as I really wanted to. I'm so thankful that I was able to do the more formal Palenque tour, and that was with a group, and it just so happened to be with a group of all Black women. So I think it was 15 of us or 14 of us all together. Two of us were there on our own solo vacations, but the majority of the group, they had all come together from the States. So I was really grateful for that because then I was able to do that tour in community and in sisterhood. And it was really actually a beautiful time to get to know these women and talk to them. And they were all in their 40s and 50s. They called themselves the 50s and the 40s group. And so that was really special. And I thought quite divine, to do that particular tour with a group of Black women. So those were my really made, and then the only maybe small, like I said, I got a little bit of a stomach something. I ate, I was doing pretty well, eating pretty much mostly what the resort had, but I did go to a local restaurant when I was doing the tour. I don't even know. Listen, I don't know where I was. I was somewhere between Palenque and Cartagena. And I had this fish, and it was good, but I think it was right after I ate that fish that I started noticing my tummy. But it wasn't extreme, and I'm fine, and I didn't get sick, and I wasn't throwing up and all that kind of stuff. But that was a bit of a con. But that's honestly kind of it, really. And so this leads me to the last part of what I want to talk about, which is why I think this is such a must do for you to consider, solo travel. Not that you have to necessarily go international, but just spending time with yourself outside of where you reside. It just really heightened for me my awareness of my own fears, my own joys, my own doubts. It That time away really increased my awareness about me, about my tendencies, about even brought to light some things that I didn't think I was so fearful of, i.e., that walking around and drawing in attention. I'm 5 feet 8, African American woman, kind of outspoken. I'm an artist. So drawing in attention is not unfamiliar for me. But I didn't realize how uncomfortable when I don't get to kind of set up or prep for that, how uncomfortable that is. And so it wasn't bad. It just brought my awareness to that and allowed me to kind of go down a little bit more of a rabbit hole to think about that more. It also just, like I said, increased my awareness on my joys and the things that I really love to do and how much I have to be more intentional and purposeful in making my joy happen. And that this can't be a one when you turn 50 thing. This needs to be a regular thing. And when I coach clients, I talk a lot pleasure and joy in your regular life. And I realize how much in my own personal life I still don't relish in that the way that I need to personally. And then my doubts, just really kind of bringing awareness to things that I felt like, oh, yeah, this particular project I'm working on, even though I'm feeling a little doubtful about it, I'm gonna just do it. But doing the trip, it's like, nah, girl, you're not gonna do that. You doubtful about it, move into certainty. Um, and the other big reason why I think this is such a big must do is your need to reset. Our need, your body is constantly working to reset itself. This is why we sleep physiologically. It's an opportunity for us to get the conscious to shut down and to let the body heal and renew and do what it needs to do without being interrupted, without you grabbing something to eat or getting upset, getting stressed out over here. Or this is why sleep becomes such a critical part, because you get settled so your body can actually work for you. Well, this trip, I think traveling and experiencing something outside of your norm gives you a similar type of reset in terms of getting into your life. For me, I was, since I've been back, I'm like, don't get back into that. No, remember, we reset. And so I had so much time away that it pushed me more into that. And it's funny, I facilitate retreats for people, but when I'm facilitating a retreat, I'm not retreating, right? And so for me, doing these solo travels, particularly those of us who are helping professionals, it just allows us to go into a reset. Those who educate, those who heal, those who are in healthcare, frontline workers, moms, dads, those of us, who just give a lot, is just a really, I think doing this for yourself is a really beautiful opportunity to reset. And the other big must do, I think, is such a must do, is so that you can see the world, so that you can see and live. I mean, I think those are kind of the obvious of travel. But I do think after 40, when we have this different maturity and we're navigating life through a bit of a different lens and understanding and even wise, space, I think seeing the world it's just different. And when you're not having to navigate children on a trip, on a vacation, or somebody else, or, get caught up visiting this person or that, it allows you to really experience travel differently and experience the actual space from a different lens. um and obviously depending on where you go, that may vary a bit, but I think it is a nice way to experience travel, because you are not as distracted. You're really able to really focus on the space you're in. And the last reason I'll just mention, and I mentioned this as one of my pros, is just the actual rest and how important it is for us to experience physical rest, and how much that adds to our joy, adds to our health, our energy, our clarity, our intuition. There's so much that it does. And I think as Black people, particularly as a Black woman, where rest is almost, it is a birthright. At the same time, so many of us have no idea how to do that, because we've been so removed from it in so many ways. To experience rest on a really tangible level and not have it equal sleep, not have it equal, let me just get on Netflix, although I did watch some Netflix, but just to really embody rest. um, I think it's a must do, especially because you're at the second half of life. Your body is different, your mind is different. You have to treat it different, and treating rest even different than maybe you would have treated it years before. So, so that is my kind of episode. I wanted to keep this not too long. Um, I would love to hear from you, those of you who have traveled. I would love to hear your stories, and I will share them here on the podcast. You can email info@findingyourvoiceafter40.com. And it could just be a sentence or two, just what solo travel means to you. And I'm happy to share that with our greater audience. I can even do some tagging on social media because I want us to begin to not see solo travel as this don don don, but more of this, yeah, yeah. This I do travel with family, I do travel with friends, I do travel with myself. And it's with myself, not by myself, which is very different mentality and connotation. So that's what I have. I hope you are having an amazing Thanksgiving. If you're listening to this after Thanksgiving, then I hope you had a really wonderful day of thanks and gratitude. If Thanksgiving isn't your thing for whatever reason, then I pray that you are still creating a space of stillness for yourself, and joy for yourself, and rest. So, you guys have an amazing week, and I look forward to bringing a guest back again next week. So, we'll see you then. Take care.